good. Feeling quite excited to hopefully get started. Oh, awesome. Hi, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm quite good. We just started our load shedding. The
Yeah,
generators just clicked back up, so yeah, it's
yeah.
crazy.
Don't worry. It was like a few minutes ago I thought like, oh, should we have like actually rescheduled it or anything? But yeah.
No, no, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
Oh, that's good then. But yeah, I spoke to Mbali earlier and she might be running like a bit late, so we can kind of just get started. We can just get started with everything. So I guess like the best way to start this off is if you kind of introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name is Atang Swartbooi. I would like to think of myself as a social justice activist by trade,
Hmm.
because of the work I do. Obviously, I am a third year law student here at the Northwest University Potchefstroom campus. And yeah, I think the best way, if someone would like just one word, I'd say
Hmm.
I want to be human. I want to be as human as possible, just trying to advocate for as many right things as possible and wanting to inspire people to just aspire to one change in the world, you know? So I think that would be me introducing myself.
Yeah, I mean that's an amazing introduction anyway, but I guess in order to like better understand you and how you've kind of gotten to this point in your life and doing the things that you do, what's kind of motivated you to really be passionate about these issues and really get involved in making change?
My mother.
Mm.
It was very crucial from a young age. She was always in a very abusive relationship up until 2020, when I thought, you know what, I'm actually going to start something that will basically try and tell people that what's happening in the world is wrong. And this was the period when gender-based violence was running riot against women, especially in South Africa.
Yeah.
When COVID-19 started, I think at some point there was like 40,000 cases of gender-based violence reported in a space of 3 months, which was quite shocking
Mhm.
for a young man as myself at the time. And yeah, I think for me at the time, I thought I would want to make a difference in the world. And I don't want, God forbid or God willing, I don't want my daughter to be walking into an environment that my mom was exposed to and I was exposed to as well, being someone who witnessed it. So yeah, it basically started from there and wanted to share a message as
Mhm.
much as possible with as many people like I could. And yeah, I'm just glad that everything could grow from there.
Yeah, that's amazing that you've been able to achieve so much in such a short amount of time as well. Hello, thanks for joining us.
Hi guys, sorry I'm running late.
No, no, no. It's honestly it's fine. So we've given like a bit of a brief introduction, so you can introduce yourself as well.
Oh, perfect. So I'm Mbali Shongwe, and I'm currently working as a GBV activist and mental health activist. I have a mental health organization called Mindful Organization, which basically aims to make psychosocial resources accessible to the
Hmm.
greater youth demographic, just because the access and the funding is very limited. And also, we try to create community and safe spaces due to the fact that mental health and the mental health journey can be quite an isolating experience. So that's the work we do. And I've just been working with other GBV activists on policy, on general aftercare treatments, things like that, that might make the healing journey a little bit gentler.
Oh, that's amazing. And I'll ask you the same question where it's like, what's motivated you to be an activist to try and make change in the world?
I think for me, I would consider myself quite an optimist, like driven by the fact that
Hmm.
people are inherently good. But I think that circumstance and society has made things a bit more difficult for us. And so oftentimes we have situations where things don't work out the way we would like to. So I think
Hmm.
after having my own personal negative experience and going through that, I sort of find it is a thing of it's either gonna bend you or break you, you know, one of those things. And I was like, I need to overcome this experience in a positive way, in a way that will be helpful to not only myself, but to the people around me. Otherwise, it's something that is so horrible that it has the capacity to diminish my light, diminish my ability to cope. And so I thought, it's, you know, you never really put yourself in the position until it happens to you, unfortunately. Like, we can never really, I think, being in that situation and knowing how difficult it is, broken system is, it's sort of I need to do what I can to help and support others, even if I can't make the major changes. I think that any way that we can help people along their journey, any way that we can some way fix or find solutions to the problems in our society, I think that it's our responsibility, all of us, to get involved and to do what we can. And so that's where my activism has been drawn from.
Yeah, definitely. I've been like speaking to a few young people, and a lot of them have also said that they feel that they need to kind of take action because they're not really involved with the decisions going on in their lives, things that are affecting them, institutions. Do you also kind of feel the same way, that it's important for you to take action because nobody else is?
100%. I think that it's so crazy that a lot of the things, societal issues and the norms that affect us are sort of constructed by a generation that's not necessarily our own. And I think that oftentimes we don't see ourselves reflected in the laws, in the party involved in the decision making because our voices aren't. But there also is the flip side, and the difficult side is that when we are in those spaces, invited into those rooms, the young voice isn't necessarily considered to be the most important. And I think a lot of it can diminish your experience or sort of doubt your capability to contribute based off age, which is a negative factor. I think that taking up space and making ourselves present in the discussions is the only way that we're going to change. And I think that it's important to see ourselves represented and reflected in the construction of our laws and the decisions that are being made around us because it affects us directly. And I think like as things are changing, you know, as a society we develop, as norms change and shift, we also need to change with them, and often it's the young voice that can reflect the changes that are happening on the ground.
Yeah, and do you feel the same?
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to think that they used the one thing that I struggled with, especially when I was starting out, was where was a platform? Where could I find that platform where I could use that one thing that many people feel like they don't have, and that's a voice. I think that so many times we are so confined to a space of allowing our mentalities to let us think that there is no platform, whereas you really do have one. Not many people are able to take it to social media, but you can damn well just be around your friends and say, you know what, what's happening there? I don't like that. And I would like to take accountability for that because that which is going to happen is going to affect me in some way in the future. Whether it be my children, whether it be future generations that don't have anything to do with me, the fact remains that it's going to affect me in some way. So I think that us as the youth, especially in this youth month, I think what was key for me was realizing that it goes beyond youth month. These months are basically a commemoration of what is going to happen, not what has happened. What the youth of 1976 and what they did for us was to basically let us know that we can do it. Not we did it, but we can do it. So I think that these months are basically a reminder of that, the fact that what awaits in the future is so much more broad than what we have already done. If we are to look at what we have already done more than what we are going to do, then what's the use of us living? What's the use of us being the youth? So I think that in that way, that's my mentality heading into these youth months. That's my mentality when I talk to the youth about all things social justice and all things, especially in my field of gender-based violence.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly why I've been doing these live streams and wanted to talk to you both, because when I'm thinking about like the change that has been made and the impact of having young people, I do think of you two, and it's, you know, the effects of using your platform and the change that you're, you know, striving to make. And I think that's really inspirational as well. And also, like you said, being able to use your voice, being able to find a platform and using that to your advantage. How have you both kind of found that, of like navigating your platforms and connecting with people?
For me, it's quite a intimidating experience, I'm not going to lie. I sort of stumbled onto my platform. I didn't really have the intention of building it or of even doing this work. I think that it actually was just my nature as a person. I often on things that I don't find comfortable. I've always been someone who will like call out people when they're doing something that's like impacting other people negatively. And so I literally stumbled into it from like just going to rallies, commenting on things that were happening, and then one day deciding to speak. But I think that day I was just moved like so greatly by other people's stories. And I think that often when it comes to gender-based violence, especially as young women, you don't really see other young women speaking about it. I think that I felt like there were no role models. I felt like there was no one I could look up to, or even people, my peers, that I could connect with, not because they haven't experienced these things, but because of the shame, because of the guilt, and because of our doubts and inability to speak in the space or speak to the topic for a multitude of reasons. And so having spoken out, I think that you recognize how many people just want someone to speak to, or how many people just need to be represented in that way. And so I found that very powerful, very healing. I think being able to speak to things that people can't necessarily name themselves for whatever reason it may be, to presence these issues, I think I found very powerful and very healing, because you know, these things are only solved by attacking them like straight on and by speaking truth to power. And so that's been great. But I think at times, as a survivor myself, it does get a bit emotionally taxing. And I think that's the case for all activists. I think because we're fighting the issues that are the hardest ones, the ones that matter to us the most, it does take an emotional toll. So I think I've had to learn slowly on the journey, the battle, or how to balance the mental health with the work, because there's no point doing this if it's just going to run me down every time.
Yeah, of course.
Finding constructive ways to speak to trauma and to speak to healing without necessarily reopening wounds. It's a lot of things that you have to navigate. I don't know if you feel this as well, Atang, but also like boundary setting. Like you sometimes have to be able to say, at this juncture, I don't have the capacity to help you in this way, or this is where sort of my capability or my like sphere of influence lies. Like sometimes people will ask you things that like are just completely like, you know, you're unable to do it. And I think a lot of the time people do see you as someone who can do it all, which is great. It's a huge compliment, but sometimes we also have to realize our limits. I think I've often stretched myself too thin and taken myself over the edge. It's hard. I think navigating a platform is very hard because not everyone agrees with you, which is good, and likely that. But then there is also the violent side, when the risk, especially speaking to gendered violence issues, that's a huge risk as well. There's a lot to navigate, but I think that you also find community, you find support, and when you see the fruits of your labor, and when you see communities building, when you see people connecting because of you using your voice in a positive way, I think that is what it's all about. And I think that's why people take on the journey of activism, and it's not necessarily about ourselves, but what we can do for others.
Yeah, so while she was talking, I was just thinking about how many things are actually very similar to what I go through. But I want to kind of explain it from a 20-year-old male's perspective, because that is what I am. Obviously, I do a lot of work in the gender-based violence fraternity or the anti-gender-based violence community. And most of the times I find the whole experience to be very offending. A lot of times we as males or we as men expect the experience to be educational, but not to touch on things that we ourselves do. For example, I have found myself called out a lot on making someone feel uncomfortable, touching a person where I'm not supposed to, doing some things that are seen as a red flag to that which you are trying to prevent. And the mere ignorance thereof really contributes to that which you are trying to prevent. And I think that no one is immune to any of these call outs or any of these accountability takes by other people. So I think from my side, it's been a very offending experience, but a very inspiring one indeed. Because what I will tell you is that it's very fun to be offended, not do something, and then go tell someone else, offend someone else, they go and tell someone else and offend someone else. In that way, we are all learning because you don't want to be offended ever again. So I think for me, it's been a very offending journey. I am friends with a lot of female activists, a lot. I am friends with a lot of male activists from Cape Town who absolutely find joy in calling me out on a lot of my nonsense. So I absolutely thrive in that. I've always found myself to be the youngest, and that meant that I'm going to have to listen a lot. I'm going to have to be open to a lot of open-minded to a lot of things, more than I would have ever thought. Now, I don't know how many people would find this weird, but a few days ago, I was in a scenario where a friend of mine told me, he's a male, told me, if you want cuddles, you can definitely come. And I've learned, at the time I was like, what? No, I'm not homosexual. He's like, no, no, no. It doesn't mean that just because I'm asking you to have cuddles with me as a male, it means that there's a reasonable expectation that you might be homosexual. In contrast, it points to male people or men being there for each other in a much more physical and intimate way without taking it further, basically. Why can we do it among female and male friends, but not between males? Females do it. So let's normalize men actually having that healthy relationship. And I've thrived in that. I have seen myself cuddling with a man, and it's absolutely comfortable. And a lot of people might call me out for it and say, but you're gay. No, I'm not. I just love people, and I'm learning every single day about things that I never thought I would. I mean, 2 years ago, I was sitting in my room worrying about my law assignment, and now here I am on a show with Mbali, and it's like, what? So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing to see. I guess like how far both of you have really grown in that sense. But I know we've kind of like touched on like how it's affecting you, but how do you kind of cope with it, with like the toil of being an activist and these expectations? Because I feel like we spoke a lot about how difficult it is and how much of a burden it can feel, but how do you cope with that?
I think coping hard, and I don't think that we ever necessarily, there's a perfect formula. I know that I'm still out, and things that might have worked for me 2 years ago don't necessarily work for me now, but I can say that the biggest thing to me has been community and support systems. And so I know my safest spaces, with my closest friends, with my family, they foster a space for me to sort of rejuvenate myself, and I think it's always important. And so when it gets too much, I sort of rely on them, and I share my experiences with them. And I think because of how long I've been on this journey, they have a very good understanding of how to support me and how to sort of bring me back to center. I think another coping mechanism has been boundary setting and rest. It's something I struggled with a lot, especially early on. When you start off on the journey, I think it's so exciting to see the changes. It's so exciting to be a part of the conversation and get invited to everything and want to do everything. I'm very much a yes man, and if I can get involved in something, I will. But I have to learn that that's also unhealthy, because it is such emotionally heavy content that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so I have to prioritize what conversations do I want to have, what things do I want to participate in, and also what am I unwilling to speak about. I think sometimes as a activist who has gone through the experience, or I'm speaking from a survivor's perspective, oftentimes I find things to be a bit intrusive, or people are asking questions that are completely unnecessary and uncomfortable. So having to learn to set boundaries and to take spaces for rest when I am emotionally burnt out, when I do need time to rejuvenate. I think there's been times I've taken weeks off, where I've taken a month off and just saying, like, you know, I don't have the capacity to give of myself at this like time. I think that that's really important, because it makes me better at my work when I'm there in my full capacity and I'm there in a healthy and stable state of mind. But when we're burnt out and frustrated and running running around and doing things and, you know, over filling our plates or our cup, like, I think that that's not helpful. So it's just sort of putting in the practices that work for you. And I think, like, just also a great emotional awareness of where are you at every point in time and how do you feel. I think that I tried to ignore it in the beginning and be like, you know, I'm doing a job and it's not necessarily about where I am or what I'm experiencing, but it is a huge part of it, because my work flows from me and from my passion and what I'm doing. So I have learned to reflect and introspect a lot, and I think that's helped me as well.
Sure. Yeah. In my regard, I am like a complete contrast. I have no boundaries whatsoever. I have no time limit as to my activism, which is wrong. But I have recently started going to therapy, right? Mainly because I've been going through the most in terms of my personal life and stuff like that. And it has kind of affected my activism as well, because I can't quite be there for other people if I'm not there for myself. So I've kind of had to realize that the boundary setting is an element that I've had to incorporate into my life, whether I like it or not. I absolutely love talking to people about their problems. I love going to people in the middle of the night, going to solve something. That's what I thrive in, and that's my passion. But I've also learned to, you know, set myself and limit myself in that capacity to say, you know, today I'm tired and I'm going to take a break because I can't help this person to my fullest of my ability if I am tired or something like that. So I think for me, I don't have that relationship with my family to say I'm going to rely on them to kind of get me through the trenches I'm going through. Mainly after my mom passed away, it was just a thing of, you know, I'm just not going to talk to anybody. So I've kind of had to like rely on a lot more on therapy, people that I don't know. I find it much more comforting to talk to people I don't know. I don't know if it's a male thing or what, but it's actually very comforting to know that someone is listening to you and someone doesn't know what you're going through, but still listening to you. So I think for me, I'm starting to do what Mbali has kind of incorporated in her life. I'm starting to realize the importance and significance thereof. But it wasn't always the case. And I think that as a man, I can kind of testify that it is a masculinity thing more than anything, and but we shouldn't confine it to only masculinity thing, and look at it as it's humanly possible to go through that stage, but it's not correct. It's not healthy to go through that. So yeah, that's for me what I do to help the situation. Therapy, crucial.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I guess in terms of like both of you with the activism that you're doing, do you have any sort of like long-term goals or anything that you're particularly like working towards and hope to achieve?
Yeah. So in terms of me, I'll take this one first because I love this question. I absolutely love this question, especially in the past 2 months. I'm working on a massive, massive concept that I won't quite reveal now, but I will tell you that it will mostly involve most South Africans. I just came back from a whole movement with the whole ballot petition thing. And that was in itself a very heavy thing to have handled. And after the ballot thing, it was almost like my mind was telling me, okay, you're done. What next? But before the whole, okay, you're done. What's next? I kind of have been thinking about this concept, and now I want to concretize it. I want to make it a realization. I want to make it real. And we had it last year. If that's going to be a clue, we had it last year. It was very successful. But this year, I probably want to do it much bigger. I'm looking at August, September in terms of what I want to do. And all I can say is that I really just want people to understand that consistency and intentional activism is all that's going to get us out of the situation that we find ourselves in. And I hope that people will take away from the event that I and my huge team are planning, they will take away from that we can actually be that inspiration to a lot of people to aspire to be better human beings in general. So I think, yeah, I'm working on something and it will soon be announced.
That's very exciting. That's very exciting.
I don't have a grand a grand plan, a master scheme, but I do have small things that I want to do, and I think that for me, from the time I started this journey, I've sort of like thought like or wanted to be solution-based activist. So it's very important to bring awareness, to promote, you know, these discussions and interdiscourses and all of those things. But I think a lot of the time we get into the cycle of speaking a lot, but nothing changes. And so with everything that I set out to do, I always work towards a goal. So there's always an end goal. I think my biggest hope or dream, well, I have two aspirations in the activism sphere, but this is gender-based violence specifically, but ambitions in other sectors as well. But I think a big thing for me is gender sensitivity training and support. And so I think that there's a whole lot of done for my first responders, our sexual assault nurses, even on the side of DNA collection and lab. I think that it's important for everyone who's involved with them, and lawyers, you know, anyone who's involved with them and involved in handling survivors. I think it's very important for a specific type of training to be undergone.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But I thought I would just circle back quickly because I felt you mentioned the bulk petition, but you kind of glossed over it, and I thought if anybody's kind of watching and doesn't particularly know, they won't necessarily realise like the impacts of what you've done. Could you explain a bit of that for anyone?
What a traumatic yet fulfilling experience that was. Okay, so that was basically on the back of someone mentioning me on a story and saying, hey, Atang, so this person, Lulama the Bay, I think we all saw that tweet about a boat driver raping a woman, and basically this woman had never had sex before, so it was a thing of they violated them in that regard, and this thing blew over on Twitter. And I had seen it a few times, but I didn't quite pay attention to it because I was doing other things as well in terms of activism. And then a lot of people started to mention me on this specific thing. And when I got mentioned, I actually started to do a lot more research, and I realized that people are talking, people are saying something, and people want something to be done. But the problem was that the chats were scattered all over the place, right? So it wasn't constructive conversation. It wasn't constructive activism. It wasn't one voice speaking about a whole host of things. It was a lot of voices speaking about one thing. So I had to kind of figure out how to get people on one platform. Did my research, and I thought, change.org has a website where you can start a petition and you can basically do that. And the petition basically advocates for the vetting or verification of drivers, either by way of, identification via a selfie before they enter the app, vetting drivers, meaning continuous assessment of driver capabilities, driver safety, and basically making sure that victims and survivors are well taken care of after the fact, and that we have improved passenger safety. And I started this whole thing and went on a whole run of awareness on social media, starting on Instagram, then made a few posts on it on Twitter, and within 2 days it was at 100,000 signatures, because I had asked a few influencers by way of a letter. You can still scroll down my Instagram, and they actually did share the post, which was incredible. I think that post was shared 5,666 times. That one post alone. So that's the power of the people, and I realized very quickly that if I'm going to do this, I'm going to need a lot of people with me. And I think the whole thing got escalated to a much more bigger audience when that happened. And as soon as the petition got on television, I remember this, like the day before I got on television, they actually asked me, okay, are you available tomorrow morning at 6? I'm like, whoa, this is pretty quickly. So yeah, I did all of that. And recently, luckily for us, we actually had a victory in the petition. Bell South Africa was continuously in communication with me and my team about what the way forward is going to be, and I was very demanding about how we were going to do things. Obviously, a lot of uh, impasse in how things should be conducted, but at the end of the day, they didn't make a few promises. I spoke to the SADC regional manager, Mr. Gareth Taylor, and we ended up actually finding a resolution, and they're going to start with self-verification, which basically doesn't defeat the whole purpose of the petition. It gives rise, or it gives effect to that petition. And that's when I realized, okay, we are doing something. Something is being done. And I've been grateful ever since for the people's support, for the way that my team has supported me, my friends. It has been a tremendous experience. The past 3 months have been incredible. I've learned so much that I don't want to go through it ever again, because it was just mind-blowing, tiring, long hours of the day. But at the end, I think we did what we needed to do. Obviously, a lot needs to be done. But from the public side, I'm very proud of the people of South Africa. It was a tremendous effort to have gotten to where we were. From both not answering anyone to both actually fearing, because 133,000 people were speaking to them in one voice. So I think that was the highlight of my year specifically already.
Yeah, it was truly amazing to see. But I think also, I really want to ask you both about like the organizations that you've founded, and yeah, just what's going on with them and your motivation to found them.
For me, mindful comes from also just personal experience and witnessing what my friends have been through, what my family has been through. I think that the university experience and coming of age very tricky for all of us as youth. And I think that there's a resources, and the resources that do exist in terms of mental health support on campus, free resources are often inadequate because there's so much. So it's not necessarily that they're effective, but just because the amount of people and demand on their services, there's a lot that falls through the cracks. And so I sort of wanted to create a space that could bridge the gap. So for students to get both education and support. And so we've sort of focused on those two tiers, where Mindful is an educational resource, whether it's mental health basic, it's speaking to social factors in our daily lives and how that interacts with mental health and what we can do to sort of create that experience. We really, we speak to anything that's going on. I think that we're constantly moving and it's very topical. And then the supportive side, so to sort of destigmatize mental illness by creating communities where people can come with their burdens, with things that they are unsure about, struggling with. So a community that understands, able to unpack and walk that journey with them. Also, we've tried to implement peer support, so one-on-one. We've tried to go into support groups as well, and we're also looking into with the ultimate goal is to make psychosocial reports accessible for everyone. So whether you need psychiatry, psychology, we eventually aim to make those resources accessible for free. It's a moving journey that it started off as a project but grew massively, especially during the time of COVID. And the demand is so high. So we're sort of in transitional period where we're relooking our current model, getting the expert opinions and building to make it a more viable resource for everybody.
Yeah, that sounds really amazing.
Yeah, that is incredible. For hashtag Kiwi for me, it's pretty much similar to what Mbali's organization is currently going through, which is a transitional period. So before that, we had started something, I think that's for me very special to me, because I'm a writer myself. I write to a news outlet on a freelance basis once in a while about a social justice issue that might be relevant at the time. But I thought it well to basically create a platform where people are going to write to their perpetrators. Most of the times I found that people can't talk to their actual perpetrator. So like the person who perpetrated this violence against them, they can't do it. So, but that part is so important, you know, letting go, that closure, that important piece might be important to someone, not everyone, but someone. And I thought to create that platform on #BeForMe, and we have now created a blog site. I don't know if you call it a blog site, but it's basically a thing on the internet now, where you can basically upload your letter to the perpetrator, telling them whatever you wanted to tell them. And we've received pretty heartbreaking, heart-wrenching stuff, you know. When you click on that link, you realize that a lot of people have been going through the most experiences, people being violated by their stepfathers, people being violated by their uncles, by their fathers, and people write to us on an anonymous basis. You can choose to write to us on an anonymous basis, or you can choose to write with your name on it. But the case may be, I don't even know who, because I have someone running it. The survivor is running that whole program. So I think in that regard, I have kind of wanted to do more in terms of public engagement with everything that I do. I wanted to do more in terms of reaching out to the community and letting them express themselves more than me explaining everything to them, you know. Let them speak as well. I think what we have done very well is the oversimplification of education. A lot of times I feel, and this, I have mentioned this to a lot of activists, when we as activists talk, we speak in such difficult English. Like someone would say something or create a poster and I'm like, what? What does this mean? Now, imagine a layman who doesn't even care about activism trying to read that. They're just going to scroll through. So I think that in that regard, I wanted to create a platform where people can basically see an oversimplification of what we are trying to say, what we are trying to educate, creating content that is relatable. I have sometimes found myself on TikTok creating videos on trends and stuff, and that video would get like 100,000 views. And that's good, because that means that a lot of people view the thing and receive the message. But we are, like I said, in a transitional period after the whole Belt South Africa thing. I literally had only time for that. So yeah, I'm also working on finding a better way of doing things, working better with my team. I love my team and I don't want to neglect them. I think the dereliction of my team has kind of upset me in some way. So I'm trying to rectify those things, and hopefully we can come back strong, and we can come back with that very same energy of wanting to oversimplify things for the public, because education is what we need, but we must make that education understandable.
Yeah, of course, of course. I'm trying to think of what I was about to ask, but the question literally just left my mind completely. Oh, I don't know. Oh, I remember now. What kind of advice what kind of advice would you give to young people who perhaps are a bit hesitant to perhaps use their voice, or kind of be a bit outspoken or challenge things in society?
I think my advice would be that there's not one way to do it right. I think that it's very personal when you're speaking to issues of such sensitivity. It's important that you feel comfortable in whatever you're trying to express. And so finding what feels most authentic to you. If for you it's signing a petition and that's where you start, just aligning yourself with that issue. If it's creating a small network of friends, speak about an issue, or if it's doing the big thing of, you know, getting on social media, or, you know, creating space to use your voice or to spread a message, then whatever it is for you, find that and navigate it in a way that's safe, because I think a lot of the time it's important to still feel protected when you're trying to do something that is of such a great impact or of such a great importance.
I think for me, it's something that Mbali touched on, which is that realize the world for what it is. I think that we are going through the motions as the youth of today, and we are kind of treading in the wrong directions in terms of what needs to be addressed. We are kind of reactive, you know, and that's something that I've realized a lot. A lot of people like to react to a lot of things. So for example, if I share a video about an altercation that happened, for example, the Swartbooi incident, people love reacting to those things and saying, oh, this is bad, oh, this is what. And people like to complain. But I feel that that is a very non-constructive way of doing things. I want people to be proactive. I want the youth to be proactive, because I'm telling you, it's very difficult to convince an old man that what you're doing is wrong, but it's very easy to get a younger generation of people to understand that where we are going needs to be a certain way. I'm not saying my way is right. I'm just saying as long as we have dialogue and conversation, and we initiate those conversations amongst ourselves, that's going to be crucial. In terms of men, I really want men to realize that we are much more we are much more entitled than we should be. You know, we are not observant to what women go through. We are not observant to what children go through. And that sometimes we are obscured by how we perceive this world to be from our perspective. And I mentioned this a lot. I'm not asking you to put yourself in someone else's shoes, because you can't do that. What I'm asking you is to delve into your humility and try to be the best possible person you can be. And that entails you looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, am I good with what I'm seeing? Am I sufficient? Am I going to be the best possible person for the next person who's going to talk to me? What kind of persona do I want to give to the world? What kind of person do I want to give to the world? And that starts with really asking yourself the questions, the very difficult questions, you know. Do you want to initiate such conversations? And if so, why? I think that it's one thing to realize that we need to, but if your reasons for doing so is wrong, then there's absolutely no use for us in doing so. So I think as men, we have a lot of ability. I don't want to mention the word power, because we have equal power to anyone in this world. We have a lot of ability. We have the ability to change the world and to make people see that we can actually be the difference that we want to make. And these hands aren't supposed to be used for something that is going to be fatal, but for that change that we want to bring upon in the world. And I really want people to understand that to inspire and to aspire are two different concepts, but they have to work in unison together. I want to be something because I saw someone be something. That's inspiration through aspiration. That's aspiration through inspiration. And I absolutely want to do that. And lastly, I want to just say that I fall onto this quote by this very famous poet. It says, I'm nobody, who are you? It doesn't mean that I think that you are nobody and you should say I'm somebody. No, it just means that realize that the next person next to you must be seen in the same light as you. You are no better than the other person. So why treat them any worse or any better, or put them at a pedestal more than they should be? Let us not put activists at a pedestal. We are not perfect. Let us not put people in higher positions on a pedestal. They are not perfect. We must put ourselves in the same level footing so that we can actually realize that we have the same power. We spoke about voice. We have the same voice. Not the same voice, but you know what I mean. we have voice, and we must all use it. So I think that will be my very elongated advice to the youth of today.
No, I think you both gave such brilliant responses, and I think that's also a really good note for us to perhaps leave this live stream on as well. Yeah. So I'd like to say a huge thank you to you both for joining me. I was looking really forward to hearing you both speak, and it's honestly been great. I can't say thank you enough.
Thank you.
And for the that you've created and the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And
thank you so much
to everyone who's joined us as well. It's been great to have some of you that have obviously sat with us since, well, yeah, for almost an hour. That really means a lot as well. So thank you all, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.